He lived alone in a large old house that looked impressive from the outside but felt cold inside. Everything was polished, perfect, and silent, except for the occasional tick of a grand clock in the hallway. He had built his life on rules, control, and a careful sense of order. He liked things neat, predictable, and, most of all, obedient. The people around him, he believed, needed to follow his standards, or they were not worth trusting. He trusted very few, and he was especially suspicious of anyone who served him. She had been working for him for a little over a year. Quiet, careful, and always attentive, she moved through the house like she belonged, yet never overstepped boundaries. She cleaned every corner, arranged every item just right, and always seemed to know what he wanted before he asked. Her presence was calm and steady, never loud or demanding. It was easy to underestimate her if someone was not paying attention, but she noticed everything. Her eyes caught small details others would miss, her mind always alert. There was a strength in her calmness, a silent intelligence that made her more than just someone who did chores. He thought about her often in ways that were both curious and suspicious. Over time, a question had formed in his mind. Was she truly loyal? Did she follow his rules because she wanted to, or because she was pretending to obey? The thought bothered him more than he liked to admit. He wanted certainty, something to prove that she was trustworthy, and so he began to think of ways to test her. It was not a cruel thought, at least in his mind. It was a matter of control, knowing the truth. He watched her work every morning. She dusted the furniture with precision, arranged the flowers in the living room with delicate care, and polished the silverware until it gleamed. Yet, while he admired her diligence, he could not shake the feeling that she might be hiding something. This suspicion grew quietly, like a shadow in the corners of his mind, and it began to occupy more of his thoughts. He planned small experiments in his head, thinking of what she might do if left to her own devices. He wanted to see her true character. She, of course, had no idea about his growing doubts. She approached her work with the same steady focus as always. In her mind, she cared about her work and respected the household she served. She had learned over time that he appreciated attention to detail and order, and she gave her best without complaint. She was not naive. She knew people sometimes misjudged others, and she understood the importance of patience and quiet observation. Her own life had taught her to be careful, to watch and listen before making judgments. She was loyal, yes, but her loyalty came from understanding, not fear. The man thought long and hard about how to test her. He imagined leaving money in places she could easily take, or valuables in a room she might enter when he was not looking. He imagined watching her from hidden corners, seeing if she would do what he considered wrong. Every time he pictured it, he felt a mix of excitement and unease. He wanted to believe in her, but he also needed proof. His need for certainty overpowered any trust he might have had. Meanwhile, she went about her day without a hint of awareness. She noticed the small things, like the dust gathering in an unreachable corner, the fingerprints on a glass that had been touched in passing, the way the curtains fell when the sunlight shifted. She cleaned with care, arranging everything as it should be, humming quietly under her breath. She knew the household rules, and she followed them not out of fear, but out of pride in her work. She enjoyed seeing the house shine, seeing order restored after the chaos of daily life. It gave her a sense of purpose. The man's mind kept returning to his plan. He would create a situation to test her loyalty. It needed to be something subtle, something that would reveal her intentions without making it obvious that he was watching. He spent hours imagining scenarios, each one more elaborate than the last. He told himself that this was necessary, that he needed to know who he could trust in his house. The thought consumed him, though he would never admit it out loud. At the same time, he noticed little things about her that unsettled him. How she moved quietly through the halls. How she seemed to anticipate his needs before he spoke. How she never complained, no matter how unreasonable his requests might be. Part of him admired her efficiency and intelligence, but another part felt threatened. He realized that she was more capable than he had allowed himself to acknowledge. It both frustrated and fascinated him. Days passed, and he watched her as closely as he could without being obvious. He observed how she interacted with the few other people who came into the house, careful, polite, and attentive, never overstepping, never revealing anything personal about herself. He noticed how she seemed to understand the rhythms of the house, how she could sense when he was approaching, even before he appeared. Every detail added to his curiosity and suspicion. She, for her part, remained patient and calm. She had learned that some people were unpredictable, that their moods could shift without warning, and that patience was often the best response. She worked steadily, never letting frustration show, even when things were difficult. Her mind was always alert, but she gave the appearance of calm obedience. She knew that being noticed for the wrong reasons could lead to trouble, and she understood how to navigate the household with intelligence and care. One evening, as the house grew quiet and the last light faded from the windows, he sat in his study, thinking about the coming days. He planned to test her soon, to see if she would act according to his expectations. He imagined leaving a valuable item out in plain sight, imagining her choice in the quiet of the night. He told himself it was a necessary measure, a way to ensure the integrity of his household. He did not notice that she was aware of the shift in his behavior. Though she had not guessed the exact nature of his plans, she could sense the change in his attitude, the careful watchfulness that had grown more pronounced. She thought about the best way to handle it, knowing that wisdom and patience were stronger than impulsive action. She had faced suspicion and doubt in her own life before, and she understood that composure and intelligence were her greatest assets. The night came, and the house settled into silence. The man went to bed, confident in the test he had prepared. He imagined himself observing, ready to see proof of her character. His mind raced with possibilities, each one a reflection of his own desire for control and certainty. He felt a sense of power in the situation, believing that he was the one who held the truth, that he would uncover her intentions. She, meanwhile, moved quietly through the house, preparing for the night. She ensured everything was in order, that the house remained clean and calm, and that no detail was overlooked. She did not know exactly what awaited her, but she trusted her instincts and her sense of judgment. She understood the importance of integrity, of acting rightly even when unobserved. She had learned that true character was revealed in small, noticed actions. As the house grew still, the stage was set for what was to come. The man slept with the belief that he would witness something that proved or disproved his assumptions. She moved with quiet purpose, aware and ready, guided by intelligence, patience, and a strong moral compass. The tension in the house was subtle but powerful, the quiet before the events that would soon change everything. In the silence, both lives waited, each unaware of how dramatically the night would reveal truths far beyond what either could. Anticipate the next morning began quietly. With sunlight spilling through the large windows of the house, he walked through the halls, examining everything with his usual attention to detail. His mind, however, was occupied with the plan he had devised. Today would be the day he would put his maid to the test. He imagined her choice, the way she might act if presented with a tempting situation. He could not shake a mixture of excitement and unease. Knowing that the result would reveal much about her character, she moved through the house as always, humming softly, her hands busy with tasks large and small. She did not notice anything unusual at first, but as she arranged the living room and polished the floors, she began to sense a subtle change in the atmosphere. There was a tension in the air, something different from the normal calm routine. She paused for a moment, listening to the silence, aware that the man was watching in ways he did not fully reveal. She remained composed, trusting her instincts and keeping her mind alert. He prepared carefully for the test. In his study, he placed a small envelope containing money on the desk, in plain sight but just out of reach from the usual cleaning path. He imagined her seeing it, and he imagined the temptation. Would she take it? Would she even consider it? Each thought made his heart race. In his mind, this test was simple, almost too simple. He convinced himself that she would reveal her true nature tonight. When he was asleep and unable to see her actions directly, the maid continued her work, unaware of the envelope. She focused on the floors, on dusting the bookshelves, on arranging the chairs so that the room felt balanced and welcoming. She took pride in her work, knowing that her care brought order and beauty to the home. Her attention to detail was not only a sign of dedication, but also a reflection of her values. She believed in doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. This quiet strength defined her character. As the day progressed, he observed her closely, noting how she moved with precision and thoughtfulness. Every gesture seemed to him both ordinary and remarkable. He wondered what she thought, whether she was aware of his scrutiny, and whether she would ever act against him. His mind kept spinning with questions, creating scenarios and imagining outcomes. The more he watched, the more he realized that she was unpredictable, not in the sense of disobedience, but in the sense that she acted with intelligence and awareness that he had not fully appreciated. Meanwhile, she sensed a subtle shift in his behavior. He was not as relaxed as usual, and she noticed the small signs of planning and anticipation in his eyes. She did not confront him, nor did she speak of her observations. Instead, she continued her duties with the same calm and composed attitude. She understood that patience and careful observation were more powerful than confrontation. She had learned to navigate situations like this before, and her experience gave her a quiet confidence. He moved through the house in the afternoon, arranging objects carefully to ensure that his test would be noticed. He left the envelope where it could be seen, making sure that the temptation was present but not too obvious. He imagined the scenario repeatedly, feeling the tension rise within him. In his mind, he saw her making a choice, and he prepared himself to react accordingly. He believed that he controlled the situation, that he would be the one to uncover the truth. She continued her work, moving from room to room, polishing, dusting, and cleaning with care. She noticed the envelope eventually placed neatly on the desk. Her eyes lingered on it briefly, but she did not move closer. Instead, she observed the surroundings, ensuring that nothing was out of order, that nothing was forgotten. She considered the envelope, but her mind was calm. She did not act on impulse, nor did she feel the need to prove herself. She understood that integrity was not tested by temptation, but revealed in quiet, deliberate actions. As the afternoon faded into evening, he grew restless. He watched her from a distance, noticing every movement, analyzing every gesture. He imagined the envelope disappearing from its place, imagining how he would confront her if it did. The tension in him grew, and he began to feel a mixture of anticipation, fear, and excitement. He believed that the coming night would answer all his questions. She prepared dinner quietly, moving with the same careful attention she always showed. She set the table, arranged the food, and made sure everything was perfect. She was aware of his scrutiny, though she did not acknowledge it openly. Her focus was on her work, on doing what was right, and on maintaining the calm order of the house. She understood that true character was revealed not in moments of temptation, but in consistent, thoughtful actions. The man lingered in the study, observing her indirectly through the hallways and reflections in mirrors. Every movement she made was analyzed, every gesture interpreted. He imagined all possible outcomes, convinced that he would see the truth. He could not relax, not for a moment, as the day moved toward evening and eventually night. He believed that his plan was flawless, and that he would finally uncover the reality of her intentions. She finished her work, ensuring that everything in the house was in order. She moved with quiet grace, her mind alert and aware. She noticed the envelope again, its presence clear, but she did not touch it. Instead, she ensured that the house remained tidy, that the food was prepared, and that everything was in place for the evening. Her actions were deliberate, thoughtful, and consistent with her values. She understood that true loyalty and integrity were not demonstrated through reaction to tests, but through steady, conscientious behavior. As night approached, the tension between them grew, though neither spoke of it. The man imagined what would happen once he went to bed, imagining the maid's choice, imagining the outcome that would either confirm or shatter his assumptions. He prepared himself mentally, convinced that he was in control of the situation. He believed that he would finally uncover the truth about her character. She moved through the house, finishing her tasks and ensuring that everything was as it should be. She noticed the subtle tension, the small changes in his behavior, but she remained composed. Her mind was clear, focused on her responsibilities, and aware of her own principles. She understood that her actions mattered more than any test, that her integrity would shine through in the choices she made quietly, without being watched. Finally, the house settled into silence. The man prepared for the night, confident that the test he had set would reveal the truth. He imagined himself observing, imagining the maid's actions, convinced that he held the key to understanding her character. He believed that the coming night would answer all his questions and provide the certainty he desired. The maid, meanwhile, prepared for the night with the same calm attention she always showed. She ensured that everything was in order, that the house remained tidy and peaceful. She noticed the envelope one last time, her eyes lingering briefly, but she did not act on it. Her choices were guided by integrity, patience, and understanding. She knew that true character was revealed not through tests and temptations, but through consistent, thoughtful, and deliberate actions. As the night fell, the stage was set. The man slept with anticipation, imagining the outcome, imagining the revelation of her character. The maid moved quietly through the house, aware and composed, guided by intelligence, strength, and moral clarity. The tension in the house was subtle, yet powerful. The quiet before the moment that would soon change everything. In the silence, both awaited the unfolding of events. Unaware of how the night would reveal truths far beyond either's imagination, the house grew quieter as night fully settled in. With only the soft hum of the city outside breaking the stillness, he was asleep in his large bed, confident that the night would reveal the truth about the maid. He had imagined every possible scenario, every choice she could make, every potential betrayal. He felt ready to witness it, though he could not see anything now, of course. The envelope he had left out, with its tempting contents, lay on the desk. Waiting silently, she waited for the house to quiet completely before moving. Her eyes were alert, her mind fully aware of every sound, every shadow that shifted in the corners. She had noticed the envelope earlier, and she understood its significance. She could see that the man was testing her, and she knew that he would be watching in his own way. But her loyalty, her integrity, and her intelligence guided her actions more than any fear of discovery. She would act thoughtfully, with patience and care, rather than taking the envelope or even touching it. She considered the larger picture. There were things in the house that needed attention, small problems that no one else had noticed. A leaky tap in the kitchen, a loose shutter that would swing open in the wind, a small crack in the wall that threatened to grow. She moved quietly, fixing each problem with skill and precision. She did not do it for recognition or reward. She did it because it was the right thing to do. Her movements were almost invisible, her hands working carefully and efficiently. She tightened screws, wiped surfaces, and secured the loose shutter. Each action was deliberate, done with care and thought. The house, which had seemed perfectly orderly, revealed little imperfections that she corrected quietly. Her attention to detail showed a mind that was observant, intelligent, and capable of handling responsibility far beyond the tasks given to her. Meanwhile, the man dreamed of her actions. In his dreams, he imagined discovering betrayal, imagining himself catching her in the act of dishonesty. He felt both excitement and anxiety. He believed that the night would reveal the truth, that he would finally see her for what she was. He imagined every possible misstep, every choice that would confirm his suspicions. In his mind, the envelope was a trap, a test, a way to uncover hidden intentions, but she was not concerned with the envelope. She noticed that the shadows of the house sometimes hid dangers that were unseen. The candle on the staircase, poorly placed, could fall and start a fire. A window slightly open could let in a gust of wind that would knock things over. She moved with care, addressing each risk quietly and efficiently. Her actions were guided by foresight and practical wisdom, the kind that comes from experience and understanding, not from fear or obligation. She worked silently, not making a sound that would disturb the sleeping man. She moved through the rooms like a shadow, unseen and unnoticed, yet completely aware of every detail. She straightened cushions, adjusted the curtains, and checked that everything was in its place. Every movement showed not just skill but thoughtfulness, a deep understanding of the household and a commitment to its care. At one point, she noticed a small mouse scurrying across the kitchen floor. Instead of reacting impulsively or causing harm, she set a small trap away from the man's path, ensuring the house would remain safe and orderly. Her solution was careful, clever, and harmless, reflecting her intelligence and calm judgment. She did not act out of fear of being watched. She acted out of a sense of responsibility and integrity. As she moved to the living room, she glanced at the envelope again. It was tempting, yes, but she did not even touch it. She understood that her loyalty was not proven by taking what did not belong to her, but by her actions that maintained honesty, safety, and care. She straightened the books on the shelves, polished the silver, and adjusted the furniture so the room felt balanced and harmonious. Every act was deliberate, showing a steady hand and a thoughtful mind. She even noticed a small leak in the ceiling that had been ignored. Water was beginning to stain the wall, and if left unchecked, it would damage the house. She found a cloth to catch the drip and placed a small bucket underneath. She then moved quietly to secure the tiles and prevent further water from coming in. Her foresight and careful handling prevented what could have been a serious problem, all without anyone noticing her actions. In the kitchen, she saw that a few fruits had fallen behind the counter. They were beginning to spoil, attracting the attention of ants. She disposed of them carefully, cleaned the area thoroughly, and left the kitchen spotless. Every movement was thoughtful and careful. She understood that her work was not only about visible tasks, but about unseen care, the kind that protected the household in ways that might never be noticed. Meanwhile, he slept deeply, unaware of the care being taken around him. He had imagined the night as a test, as a revelation of hidden betrayal. He had thought that he would discover her true nature through a moment of temptation, but the truth was unfolding quietly, in ways he could never have predicted. The actions of the maid, unseen and unnoticed by him, were shaping a reality that would surprise him completely. She moved from room to room, fixing small problems, cleaning unnoticed corners, and ensuring the household remained safe and orderly. Her actions were guided by intelligence, experience, and a strong sense of moral responsibility. She acted with thoughtfulness and care, not for recognition, not for reward, but because she understood what was right. Every action reflected her integrity, her loyalty, and her quiet strength as the night continued. She prepared a small drink and snack for the man, leaving it on the bedside table where he would see it in the morning. It was a thoughtful gesture, showing care and attention without expecting anything in return. She ensured that everything in the house was in its proper place, that the rooms were tidy, and that the environment was safe and comfortable. Every detail reflected her intelligence and foresight. The man in his sleep dreamed of discovery and confrontation. He believed that the envelope would reveal the truth, that he would uncover dishonesty or betrayal. He did not know that the true test of character was being carried out in quiet, unseen actions. The maid's loyalty was not proven through temptation, but through her careful, intelligent, and moral choices throughout the night. Finally, as the first light of dawn crept through the windows, she completed her tasks. She moved quietly to ensure that everything remained in order, that the house was safe, clean, and prepared for the day. Her actions had been deliberate, thoughtful, and intelligent. She had handled situations that no one would notice, but that made a real difference. She had acted with loyalty and integrity. Proving her character without the man's knowledge, the house remained quiet, and the man continued to sleep, unaware of the unseen care that had shaped the night. The maid, however, had acted in ways that reflected her intelligence, strength, and moral clarity. The night had been a silent test, not of temptation, but of character, and in every action she took, she demonstrated a loyalty and integrity that no trick, trap, or temptation could reveal. As the sun began to rise, casting light across the house, the stage was set for the man's discovery. The events of the night had unfolded quietly, carefully, and completely. The maid's actions, though unseen, had changed the household in ways that he could not yet imagine. The test he had imagined had taken a direction far beyond his expectations. And soon, he would see that the truth of her character was far greater and more admirable than he had ever imagined. Morning light filled the house with a soft glow, shining through the tall windows and lighting up every room with warmth. The man stirred in bed, slowly waking from a deep sleep. For the first time in a long while, he felt a strange sense of anticipation, not about what he would catch, but about the unknown outcome of his plan. He had imagined what he might see, what evidence of betrayal might be waiting for him. Yet nothing could have prepared him for the reality. He walked out of his room into the main hall, noticing immediately that something felt different. The house was still perfectly orderly, every room pristine, even more so than usual. He expected signs of disturbance or disobedience, small traces of a slip in the maid's attention, but there were none. In fact, everything seemed almost better than usual. His curiosity and anxiety grew as he moved through the rooms. Inspecting the envelope in the areas where he had expected her to act, the envelope sat exactly where he had left it, untouched. He stared at it, trying to understand. He had been sure she would at least touch it, perhaps even take the money. He could hardly believe it, her restraint was absolute. His mind raced, analyzing every possibility, trying to uncover what had happened during the night. He realized that he had been expecting deception, assuming dishonesty, yet she had done nothing of the sort. Instead, she had remained true to her character. He began to notice small changes in the house that he had overlooked before. The loose shutter on the balcony was now secure. The small leak in the kitchen had been caught and prevented. A piece of furniture that had been slightly off-kilter now stood perfectly aligned. Even the broken tile on the stairwell had been temporarily fixed. He moved through the house in disbelief, realizing that someone had not only refrained from wrongdoing, but had actively improved the household while he slept. At that moment, the maid appeared in the doorway, carrying her cleaning cloths, her face calm and composed. She greeted him politely, her tone neutral, giving nothing away. She had finished her night's work, and her demeanor was as steady as ever. She had made no claim, no announcement of what she had done. And yet every detail of the house reflected her careful attention and foresight. The man stood still, overwhelmed by a mix of admiration, guilt, and shock. He wanted to speak, to ask her how she had known what to do, how she had fixed so many small problems without being noticed. But words failed him. He realized that his assumptions about her loyalty had been completely wrong. His need to control and test her had blinded him to her true nature. Here was a woman who had acted with intelligence, integrity, and care, not because she had to, but because it was the right thing to do. He walked to the desk where the envelope lay and picked it up, examining it closely. It was untouched, exactly as he had left it. He felt a pang of shame, understanding that he had designed a test that was unnecessary, a test that underestimated her character. She had proven herself without ever needing to be tempted, without ever needing to prove anything for him. His mind struggled to reconcile the arrogance that had led him to this point with the humility he now felt. He began to walk through the rest of the house again, noticing more small improvements that she had made. The dust in hard-to-reach corners was gone. The kitchen was spotless, the living room arranged perfectly. Even the small mouse that had been a potential nuisance had been taken care of cleverly and humanely. Every action reflected thought, intelligence, and a moral clarity that he had never expected. He began to realize that her loyalty was not something that could be tested with money or temptation. It was demonstrated through careful, deliberate, and ethical actions. The maid, sensing his astonishment, spoke softly. "I noticed a few things that needed attention. I thought it would be better to handle them quietly." Her words were simple, calm, and humble. There was no boastfulness, no sense of superiority, just a straightforward explanation of her actions. She had not sought recognition. She had only acted according to her values and understanding of what was right. The man felt a deep sense of humility wash over him. He had expected to discover deception or hidden motives, yet what he found was the opposite: integrity, thoughtfulness, and intelligence beyond his assumptions. His own arrogance, his need to control, had blinded him to the very qualities that made her extraordinary. For the first time, he began to reflect on his behavior. Questioning the way he treated others and the expectations he placed on them, he remembered each small improvement, she had made during the night, the loose shutter secured, the leak caught, the furniture aligned, the subtle fixes to prevent damage. He realized that she had acted without needing to be watched, without needing external validation, driven solely by her sense of responsibility and care. Every action had been deliberate and thoughtful, showing a character far stronger than he had imagined. He began to understand that trust and loyalty were not things to be tested through deception or manipulation. They were revealed in consistent, conscientious actions, often unseen, often unnoticed, yet always meaningful. Her behavior had taught him a lesson in humility, patience, and respect. The quiet diligence, intelligence, and moral clarity she demonstrated were far more powerful than any proof he had thought he needed. For a long time, he simply watched her, observing how calmly and efficiently she moved through the house, how she carried herself with dignity and quiet strength. Her presence alone now commanded respect, not through fear or control, but through competence and integrity. He realized that his assumptions had been completely misguided, and he felt a mixture of awe and regret. He wanted to speak, to apologize for his suspicions, to express gratitude, yet he struggled to find words that could convey the depth of his realization. The magnitude of the lesson he had learned weighed on him heavily. His plans to test her loyalty had been unnecessary, even misguided. The truth about her character had been clear all along, revealed not through trickery or temptation, but through her own intelligence, moral clarity, and quiet diligence. The maid remained composed, patient, and dignified. She had no need to prove herself, no need to explain her actions beyond the simple words she had spoken. Her calmness contrasted sharply with his internal struggle, highlighting the gap between his assumptions and reality. Her behavior had not only preserved the integrity of the household, but it also opened his eyes to a new understanding of trust and human character. As the day continued, he began to take tentative steps toward acknowledging his mistake. He observed her as she moved through her morning tasks, noting again the care, intelligence, and thoughtfulness she brought to every action. Each gesture reminded him of the lesson he had learned during the night. His mind slowly shifted from control and suspicion to respect, gratitude. He realized that he had been blind to the qualities that truly mattered. Intelligence, loyalty, integrity, and moral clarity were not proven by temptation or testing, but by consistent, deliberate action. She had shown all of these in abundance, quietly and without seeking recognition. His assumptions about her had been based on appearances and prejudice, not on the reality of her character. By the time the sun was fully up, he knew that his life had changed in a subtle yet profound way. He had witnessed a demonstration of character that challenged everything he had believed about control, loyalty, and trust. He felt a deep sense of humility and a newfound respect for the woman who had served him with such quiet brilliance. The experience had opened his eyes, and he understood that the lessons he had learned would stay with him forever. The maid continued her work, maintaining her composure, her calm demeanor, and her thoughtful attention to detail. She had acted out of integrity, intelligence, and moral clarity, not because she had to, but because it was her nature. The man, now fully aware of the truth, felt a mix of admiration, respect, and self-reflection. He had been tested in a way he had not anticipated, and the result had changed him entirely. The morning continued to unfold in a quiet, reflective calm. The man moved through the house, observing everything the maid had done. Every corner of the home reflected her thoughtfulness, her intelligence, and her integrity. It was as if the house itself was a testament to her character, a silent demonstration of her loyalty and care. The realization settled heavily on him. He had underestimated her, doubted her, and even tried to manipulate her trust. And yet she had acted with grace, humility, and unwavering dedication. He found himself standing in the living room, looking around at the neat arrangement of furniture, the polished surfaces, and the absence of any signs of disturbance. He remembered the envelope, the small test he had devised, and he felt a rush of shame and awe. The test had failed not because she had betrayed him, but because it had revealed a truth far greater than he had anticipated. Her loyalty was not something that could be tested with money or temptation. It was evident in her consistent actions, her attention to detail, and her moral clarity. She appeared beside him quietly, her expression calm, professional, yet filled with a subtle strength that was impossible to ignore. She did not gloat, did not boast, and did not offer unsolicited explanations. Her quiet confidence was more powerful than any words could be. She had proven herself through her actions alone, and the man realized that these actions spoke louder than any test or trap he could have set. He cleared his throat, feeling a lump in his throat, unsure where to begin. Words seemed inadequate to express the mix of emotions swirling inside him: shame, gratitude, respect, and even a strange sense of wonder. He had come to the house seeking confirmation of suspicion, and instead he had found a lesson in humility, trust, and the depth of human character. I was wrong, he finally said, his voice quieter than usual. He looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. I thought I needed to test you. I thought I needed proof, but I see now that the proof was here all along in everything you do. She nodded, her calm demeanor unchanged, and replied simply, I only did what I thought was right. I do not need tests to guide my actions. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of wisdom and integrity. She had acted out of her values, not fear or expectation. And the man realized that this was far more important than any proof he could have demanded. The man felt a wave of relief and clarity wash over him. He had learned a valuable lesson about trust, about humility, and about the danger of underestimating others. He had been so focused on control and certainty that he had failed to see the true character of the person in front of him. Her actions had demonstrated not only loyalty but intelligence, foresight, and a moral clarity that he could not deny. He began to reflect on his own behavior, the ways he had doubted and tested others, the assumptions he had made based on appearances and prejudices. He realized that his attempts to control and manipulate trust had been misguided. True loyalty and integrity were not revealed through tests and traps, but through consistent, conscientious actions, often unseen, often unnoticed, yet always meaningful. Throughout the day, he observed her as she continued her work, her movements deliberate, thoughtful, and calm. Every task she performed reinforced the lesson he had learned. She maintained order, anticipated needs, and addressed problems with skill and intelligence. The house was not just clean and organized. It was a reflection of her care, her dedication, and her wisdom. Each act, though seemingly small, carried weight and meaning. He began to take steps to change his own approach. He spoke to her with genuine respect, acknowledging her efforts and her character. He offered assistance when appropriate, listened more carefully, and began to let go of the need to control every detail. His interactions with her transformed, guided now by recognition of her intelligence and integrity rather than suspicion and dominance. He found himself learning from her, inspired by the calm strength and moral clarity she displayed. Over time, the relationship grew into one of mutual respect and understanding. The man, once domineering and suspicious, became more humble, more reflective, and more appreciative of the people around him. He recognized that true leadership and trust were not about testing others, but about acknowledging their strengths, respecting their abilities, and fostering an environment where integrity could flourish. The maid continued her work, her demeanor steady and professional, her actions reflecting the same careful intelligence and moral clarity she had demonstrated from the beginning. She had shown that loyalty and integrity were not about proving oneself under pressure, but about consistent, thoughtful action, done quietly and without expectation of reward. Her presence became a stabilizing force in the household, a reminder of the power of character and the importance of respect. The man found himself reflecting often on the night that had changed everything. He thought about the envelope, the small test, and the many improvements she had made to the house while he slept. He realized that her actions had not only preserved the household, but had also preserved his own sense of perspective. He had learned to value patience, integrity, and quiet intelligence. Understanding that these qualities could not be forced or manipulated, they had to be observed, respected, and acknowledged. Days turned into weeks, and the change in the man became evident in his daily behavior. He treated the maid and others with greater respect, listened more attentively, and allowed others to act without interference or suspicion. He had learned that control and mistrust could never replace genuine respect and understanding. Her example had shown him a new way of living, one guided by humility, observation, and appreciation for the unseen efforts of others. The house, once a symbol of control and rigid order, now felt alive with respect and cooperation. The small details that had been unnoticed before were now acknowledged and appreciated. The man had learned to see beyond appearances and assumptions. Recognizing the true value of actions performed with integrity and care, the household became a place of quiet harmony. Guided by mutual respect and understanding, the maid, consistent and steady, continued her work with grace. Her quiet diligence, intelligence, and moral clarity became the benchmark for behavior in the household. She demonstrated that true strength was not loud or boastful, but consistent, thoughtful, and principled. Her actions had reshaped the man's perspective, teaching lessons that would last a lifetime. In the end, the man realized that he had gained something far more valuable than the answer to a test. He had discovered humility, respect, and understanding. He had learned that loyalty could not be measured through manipulation, but through observation and recognition of consistent integrity. He had learned to value the quiet strength and moral clarity of another human being, and in doing so, he had transformed his own character. The day closed with the house in perfect order, the sun casting warm light across the polished surfaces and neatly arranged rooms. The man felt a sense of peace he had never known before. He had been tested not by himself, but by the actions of another, and the lessons he learned were profound. The maid's quiet intelligence, loyalty, and moral clarity had changed his life, teaching him that true character shines brightest when it is unseen, untested, and performed for the sake of what is right. And from that day forward, the relationship between the man and the maid was built not on suspicion or control, but on trust, respect, and genuine appreciation for one another's character. Days turned into weeks, and the change in the man continued to grow. He had learned a lesson in humility and trust that stayed with him, guiding the way he interacted with the people around him. The maid remained a constant presence, performing her duties with her usual quiet intelligence and care, but now the relationship between them had shifted. It was no longer one of suspicion and control. It was one of mutual respect, understanding, and unspoken appreciation. He began to notice the little things that she did every day, things that had once gone unnoticed or taken for granted. She would organize the books in the study just so, ensuring they were easy to find. She would polish the silverware to a shine, not because he demanded it, but because she took pride in her work. She arranged fresh flowers in the living room, making the house feel alive and welcoming. Each of these small acts reflected her character, her dedication, and her thoughtfulness. At first, he felt almost guilty for having doubted her, for having set a test that implied he did not trust her. But that guilt slowly transformed into admiration. He began to see her as a guide, someone whose calm intelligence and moral clarity could teach him as much as he had ever thought he could teach others. He realized that trust was not something that could be forced or tested. It was something to be recognized and respected. One afternoon, he found himself sitting quietly in the study, watching her move through the rooms. She was tidying up the dining area, humming softly to herself. She worked without hurry, each movement deliberate, each task done with care. He felt a sense of peace in observing her, understanding for the first time the depth of her character. She was not just a worker in the house. She was its heart and soul. Ensuring that everything ran smoothly, efficiently, and thoughtfully, he decided to let her take on more responsibilities around the house, giving her the autonomy she had always deserved, but which he had never allowed before. He observed from a distance, noting how she handled tasks with intelligence and foresight. She organized the pantry efficiently, made subtle improvements to the layout of the kitchen, and even prepared meals with a care that balanced both nutrition and presentation. Everything she did reflected her competence and her quiet strength. The man also began to reflect on his own behavior and the way he had interacted with others throughout his life. He realized that he had often judged people hastily, relying on appearances rather than actions, and assuming intentions that were not there. He began to approach his relationships differently, listening more carefully, observing without jumping to conclusions, and acknowledging the efforts of others with genuine appreciation. The lesson he had learned from the maid was becoming a guiding principle in his life. One evening, as the sun set and the house was bathed in warm golden light, he watched her tending to the garden. She moved with care, watering the plants, trimming the edges, and ensuring that everything was in order. Her hands were skilled, her attention to detail meticulous. She seemed to have a natural rhythm with the environment around her, a balance of diligence and creativity. He realized that her influence extended beyond the house itself. Touching every corner of life with her thoughtful care, he began to ask for her advice on small matters around the house. How to rearrange furniture for better use of space, how to prevent leaks and damage, how to manage the daily routine more efficiently. She offered her guidance calmly and politely, never showing frustration or pride. Her suggestions were practical, intelligent, and always considerate. He realized that she had an innate wisdom that went beyond household tasks. She had the ability to see things clearly and act in ways that benefited everyone. The man also noticed the changes in himself. He felt less need to control every detail, less urgency to question and test. He trusted not only her, but the process of life itself. Understanding that integrity and intelligence revealed themselves in actions over time, he found a sense of relief in this shift, a lightness that came from letting go of constant suspicion and control. He could now focus on observing and appreciating rather than controlling and doubting. She, meanwhile, continued her work with the same dedication. Unaware that her actions had become a quiet source of inspiration for him, she maintained the balance of the household effortlessly, handling multiple tasks with skill and patience. Her presence was calming, her efficiency unmatched, and her integrity unwavering. She never sought recognition, yet her influence was profound, shaping the household in ways both visible and invisible. One day, a minor problem arose, a small leak in the attic that had gone unnoticed for weeks. The man noticed it first, unsure how to address it. But before he could act, she appeared already assessing the situation. She explained the problem calmly and outlined the steps to fix it, taking the lead without hesitation. She moved with purpose, securing the leak and preventing further damage. He watched, impressed by her quick thinking and practical intelligence. Once again, he realized how much he had underestimated her. This event was a turning point. He began to rely on her judgment more, valuing her insight, and understanding that her actions were guided by competence and ethical responsibility, not obligation or fear. She demonstrated that true leadership and strength often come from humility and thoughtful action, rather than authority and control. Her behavior inspired him to approach challenges in life with patience, observation, and respect for others' abilities. As weeks passed, the house flourished under her care. Small improvements, unnoticed by anyone else, added up to create a sense of harmony and efficiency. The garden thrived, the rooms were impeccably maintained, and even minor repairs were handled before they became major issues. Her influence brought a sense of balance, showing the power of consistent, intelligent, and morally grounded action. He found himself learning from her example in more ways than one. He began to see that life could be managed with patience, careful observation, and thoughtful action. He realized that the lessons she had taught him went beyond household management. They were lessons about character, integrity, and the quiet strength that comes from doing what is right without expectation of reward or recognition. One morning, he reflected on how far he had come. He remembered the initial suspicion, the test he had devised, and the shock of discovering her integrity. He understood now that true trust cannot be forced or tested. It must be observed, recognized, and respected. The maid had shown him that character is revealed through consistent, thoughtful actions. Not by temptation or manipulation, their relationship had transformed into one of mutual respect and understanding. He no longer viewed her as someone to be tested or controlled, but as a partner in maintaining the household's balance and harmony. She continued her work with humility, intelligence, and dedication, shaping the household and influencing him in ways both subtle and profound. The man began to share more responsibilities, taking her advice seriously and allowing her autonomy in decisions that affected the household. He listened to her suggestions, observed her careful actions, and respected her judgment. In doing so, he learned to value collaboration and the insights of those around him. His perspective on trust, loyalty, and human character had been completely reshaped by her quiet influence. Even the smallest tasks she performed, once overlooked or taken for granted, now stood as reminders of her integrity and intelligence. Whether it was arranging the books, preparing meals, or tending the garden, her actions spoke volumes about the kind of person she was. She had shown that true strength and loyalty are revealed in the consistent, careful, and thoughtful choices made in everyday life. By the end of the 6th part of this ongoing story, it was clear that the maid had transformed not only the household, but the man himself. He had learned humility, respect, and the value of observing and appreciating the actions of others. He had discovered that trust cannot be demanded. It must be earned and recognized through consistent, principled action. Her example had shaped him into a more thoughtful, respectful, and self-aware person. Life in the house continued with a newfound harmony. The man and the maid shared an understanding built on respect, trust, and recognition of character. Every day brought small lessons and subtle insights, reinforcing the importance of integrity, diligence, and quiet intelligence. The household thrived, not just in cleanliness and order, but in balance, respect, and a deep appreciation for the unseen efforts that shaped its daily life. The man no longer felt the need to test or control. He had learned that the greatest lessons come from observing, appreciating, respecting those who act with intelligence, integrity, and care. The maid had shown him that character is revealed not through temptation but through consistent, thoughtful action. And in that realization, he found a sense of peace, understanding, and lasting transformation.